Have you ever felt like your entire world just collapsed around you? That moment when the structures you built, the identity you crafted, the life you thought was stable, suddenly crumbles beneath your feet. If you're nodding right now, stay with me, because what I'm about to share might completely transform how you view these breaking points in your life. We've all been conditioned to fear collapse. Society teaches us that falling apart is something to avoid at all costs. A failure, a breakdown, a punishment for some misstep we've taken. But what if I told you that collapse isn't the end of your story, but rather the most powerful beginning you could ever experience? But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. This collapse, whether it's a relationship ending, a career setback, a health crisis, or a complete identity unraveling, arrives not as your enemy, but as perhaps the most honest friend you'll ever have. Has this ever happened to you? That moment when everything falls apart and in the raw aftermath you glimpse something authentic about yourself that was buried beneath all those carefully constructed layers. The invitation hidden within collapse is radical and counterintuitive. While our instinct screams to rebuild exactly what was lost, to return to the comfort of the familiar, there's a whisper of possibility suggesting something far more revolutionary. What if instead of rebuilding the old, you created something entirely new? Think about it. The structures that collapsed were vulnerable by their very nature. They could be shaken, destroyed, taken from you. But what if this breaking apart is actually life conspiring to help you build something that cannot be threatened, something beyond the reach of external circumstances? The path through collapse isn't about restoration, it's about transformation. It's about allowing yourself to be completely undone, to sit in the discomfort of not knowing who you are becoming, and to trust that this dismantling is the necessary preparation for your evolution. The most powerful version of yourself isn't waiting in your past. It's emerging from the very rubble you're standing in right now. What you're about to discover might surprise you, because contrary to everything you've been taught about holding yourself together, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is to allow yourself to completely fall apart. If these ideas about sovereignty resonate with your own journey, hit subscribe and join our community of conscious individuals reclaiming their personal power. Let's examine this idea of ruins as the foundation for something greater, not just reminders of what was lost. Think about it. Throughout history, the most transformative leaders didn't emerge from perfect circumstances. They rose from disruption, from moments when everything familiar was stripped away. When the comfortable structures of your life collapse, you stand among the ruins with two possible mindsets. You can mourn what was, clinging to memories and familiar patterns, or you can see those broken pieces as the raw materials for something far more magnificent than what existed before. This perspective shift represents the hidden truth that separates those who merely survive from those who ultimately conquer. Consider the journey of someone like Nelson Mandela. 27 years in prison could have destroyed him. Instead, that crucible of isolation and hardship forged an unbreakable resolve that would later transform a nation. His power didn't come from comfort. It emerged specifically because comfort was denied to him. This paradox appears throughout human experience. Authentic power rarely develops in comfortable circumstances. Like a muscle that only grows stronger when pushed to its limits, your capacity for impact expands most dramatically when you're forced beyond what you believed you could endure. I've witnessed this phenomenon repeatedly in my own life and in the lives of others I've studied. The moments that felt like absolute devastation, relationship endings, career setbacks, health challenges, later revealed themselves as essential redirections, clearing the way for something more. aligned with my true purpose. The darkness isn't the enemy of your development. It's the necessary backdrop against which your internal light becomes visible. When everything external is removed, you finally discover what lies at your core. What cannot be taken from you because it was never given to you in the first place. It was always there, waiting to be revealed through challenge. Now I want to go even deeper into this process of transformation through adversity. What exactly happens within us when we stand amid life's ruins and choose to see potential rather than just destruction? The psychological mechanics behind this shift hold profound implications for how we navigate our most difficult moments. If any of this resonates with your own experience, times when personal devastation eventually led to unexpected growth, write "ruins became my foundation" in the comments below. I'm curious how many of you have already discovered this principle at work in your own lives. Fortune favors. Not the passive observer waiting for luck, but the proactive strategist who takes decisive action. This is perhaps Machiavelli's most transformative insight, that power gravitates toward those who understand its nature and aren't afraid to pursue it deliberately. When we strip away our comfortable illusions about how the world should work, we begin to see the raw mechanisms of influence that shape every relationship and institution around us. Many of us have been conditioned to believe that hard work alone brings success, that merit naturally rises, and that fairness eventually prevails. But this idealistic mindset can actually become our greatest limitation. What's fascinating about Machiavelli's revelations is how they expose the hidden truths operating beneath the surface of all human interactions. Consider how often in your own experience you've seen capable people overlooked, while those who mastered the art of perception thrived. This isn't a cynical observation, it's a practical awakening to the reality that influences every aspect of our lives. The most profound journey begins when we stop resisting these principles and instead learn to navigate them with awareness. Think of it as developing a new kind of intelligence, not manipulative, but strategically mindful. Those who understand the subtle currents of power can accomplish more good than those who remain naive about how influence actually works. Behind the scenes of every significant achievement, whether in business, politics, or social change, you'll find leaders who intuitively grasp these Machiavellian insights. They recognize that appearing virtuous often matters more than being virtuous in private. They understood that timing and adapting to circumstances determine success more than rigid principles, and they realized that carefully cultivated perception shapes reality far more than we care to admit. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by examining how these principles can be applied ethically and effectively in our modern context. The beauty of these insights isn't just in recognizing how power works, it's in learning how to leverage these realities toward meaningful ends while maintaining your integrity. When we understand that human nature responds predictably to certain stimuli, we gain the ability to navigate complex situations with greater wisdom. This awareness doesn't corrupt you. It empowers you to operate effectively in the world as it actually exists, rather than the idealized version we wish existed. If this perspective is helping you see your own situations differently, write "seeing clearly now" in the comments. I'm curious how many of you are experiencing this shift in understanding power dynamics in your own lives. The beauty of destruction manifests in unexpected ways. When we witness the aftermath of what's been torn down, our instinct pushes us to mourn what was lost. But what if we're missing the deeper revelation? The demolished building isn't just debris, it's the foundation for what comes next. The fallen tree isn't just dead wood, it's the beginning of new life in the forest floor. This perspective shift represents a profound mindset transformation that few truly embrace. When life dismantles your carefully constructed plans, you're not just experiencing loss, you're receiving raw materials for something entirely new. Think about how diamonds form through immense pressure that transforms ordinary carbon into something extraordinary. Your destruction operates by the same natural laws. I've witnessed countless journeys of people who turned their personal catastrophes into catalysts. Take Sarah, who lost her corporate job after 15 years of loyal service. Initially devastated, she discovered that this career collapse created space for her dormant entrepreneurial spirit to emerge. 3 years later, her business generates triple her previous income. But more importantly, she works with purpose that never would have surfaced without that initial collapse. The hidden truth behind your painful experiences is that they're not random acts of cruelty. They're specifically designed challenges that shape you into someone stronger, more resilient, and ultimately more whole. When you're in the midst of devastation, this perspective seems impossible to grasp. But the scar tissue that forms after emotional wounds heals stronger than the original skin ever was. This isn't about toxic positivity or denying genuine grief. It's about recognizing the duality of destruction, understanding that within the same experience that breaks you apart lies the seeds of your reconstruction. The Japanese art of kintsugi repairs broken pottery with gold, highlighting rather than hiding the breaks. The result is more valuable than the original unmarred piece. Your life follows this same principle. The real power emerges when you learn to weaponize your pain. Instead of letting it immobilize you, you transform it into fuel. Every rejection letter becomes motivation to refine your approach. Every relationship that dissolves teaches you exactly what you need in your next connection. Your enemies become unwitting mentors, revealing precisely what you need to strengthen. Now, I want to go even deeper into this transformative process because understanding it intellectually isn't enough. You need to embody it as a daily practice. When destruction visits your life, your first response creates the foundation for everything that follows. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" the question becomes, "What is this creating space for?" This shift alone redirects your entire experience. When you look at nature, nothing is ever truly destroyed. It merely changes form. The fallen tree becomes soil for new growth. The volcano's destruction creates the most fertile land on Earth. Your personal devastation operates by these same universal principles, recycling your pain into possibility. If what I'm sharing resonates with your experiences, write Phoenix Rising in the comments, because that's exactly what you become when you transform destruction into creation. These strategies offer an invaluable perspective shift, allowing us to view collapse not through the lens of emotional devastation, but as a calculated opportunity for rebirth. There's a profound transformation that occurs when we separate ourselves from the emotional charge of a breakdown and instead adopt the mentality of an architect surveying a demolition site, seeing not destruction, but the cleared foundation for something better. The remarkable thing about strategic detachment is how it impacts our decision-making process. When we're entangled in grief or panic during collapse, we make choices from a place of fear, reactionary decisions that often compound our problems. But when we cultivate emotional distance, we access a clarity that reveals hidden opportunities invisible to others still caught in emotional turbulence. Consider how nature itself approaches collapse and renewal. A forest fire that appears catastrophic actually clears dead wood and releases nutrients, creating the conditions for unprecedented growth. Similarly, your personal or professional collapse can eliminate what wasn't working, freeing resources and energy that were being drained by failing systems. Don't miss future explorations of personal sovereignty and authentic living. Subscribe now to receive notifications when new wisdom drops. This journey is just beginning. This mindset revolution doesn't happen overnight. It requires a deliberate practice of stepping back when everything in you wants to rush in and fix the situation. It means developing the discipline to pause, breathe, and ask yourself, if I were advising someone else in this exact situation, what would I recommend? This simple reframing often reveals solutions that remain obscured when we're too close to our own circumstances. In my journey, working with clients facing various forms of collapse, I've witnessed remarkable revelations emerge once they embrace this approach. One entrepreneur whose business was failing described the shift as finally putting on the right prescription glasses after years of squinting through fog. With strategic detachment, she could see that her collapse wasn't a reflection of personal failure, but a natural consequence of market shifts she hadn't adapted to. Information that became actionable once the emotional noise cleared. The beauty of strategic detachment lies in its universality. Whether you're experiencing the end of a relationship, a career setback, or a complete identity crisis, the fundamental principles remain consistent. Observe without judgment, analyze patterns, and identify leverage points for rebuilding. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by exploring the specific techniques that allow you to maintain this strategic mindset, even when facing intense emotional pressure. Because admittedly, detachment sounds simple in theory, but becomes challenging when you're in the middle of your world falling apart. If you recognize this pattern in your own life, seeing collapse as opportunity rather than only destruction, write "strategic observer" in the comments. I'm curious how many of you have already begun this perspective shift. This transformation isn't about overnight success. It's about the deliberate architecture of your future self. When you choose to rise in silence, you're actually doing something revolutionary in today's validation-obsessed culture. You're prioritizing substance over appearance, and that's increasingly rare. Think about the journey of a master craftsman. They don't unveil their work halfway through. They understand something fundamental about creation that we've forgotten in our instant gratification world. True mastery requires space to fail privately before succeeding publicly. Your comfort zone feels like home, but it's actually more like quicksand, deceptively pleasant until you realize you're stuck. That comfort is what I call the ultimate illusion. A psychological trap that promises safety while stealing your potential. Breaking free requires acknowledging an uncomfortable truth. Your comfort is actively working against your evolution. Strategic silence isn't about hiding, it's about protecting your vision during its most vulnerable stage. When you prematurely expose your ambitions, you invite energy that your developing dreams might not be strong enough to withstand. Consider how many people abandon their paths because they shared too soon, received criticism they weren't ready for, and lost momentum. This approach isn't about secrecy for its own sake. It's about creating a sanctuary where your transformation can unfold without the distortions of external opinions. It's a space where you can experiment, adjust, and refine without the pressure of expectations. Every significant breakthrough in history came from people who endured the uncertain middle phase, that space between starting and succeeding where everything feels like it might fall apart. Most people quit here, but this is precisely where your character is being forged. What appears as isolation is actually incubation. You're not withdrawing from life, you're preparing to enter it more fully. The discipline required isn't just about avoiding distractions. It's about honoring the process that transforms potential into reality. Remember that your comfort zone didn't appear by accident. It was designed, partly by circumstances, partly by choices, to keep you safe but limited. Dismantling it requires equal intentionality, a conscious decision to trade temporary comfort for lasting fulfillment. The most powerful journeys happen beneath the surface, where only you can witness the daily battles and small victories that accumulate into profound change. These hidden moments, not the public achievements, are where your transformation truly lives. If this resonates with your experience, write "silently rising" in the comments. Now, I want to go even deeper into how exactly you can implement this philosophy in your daily life. There is this unwritten rule in our society that glorifies turning pain into power. Everywhere you look, you'll find the narrative, "I'm stronger because of what broke me." We wear our traumas like badges of honor, thinking that they've made us untouchable. But there's a hidden truth beneath this. Transformation story we've collectively embraced. When we frame our pain exclusively as a crucible for strength, we often miss the complex reality of what healing actually looks like. The journey isn't a straight line from wounded to warrior. Some days, that pain that supposedly made you untouchable leaves you curled up in bed, unable to face the world. And that's perfectly normal, despite what the highlight reels of recovery might suggest. What I've discovered in my own path is that resilience isn't about becoming hardened or untouchable. It's about developing a relationship with vulnerability that doesn't leave you terrified of feeling deeply. The most profound strength often comes not from declaring ourselves unbreakable, but from acknowledging that we remain breakable and showing up anyway. Behind the scenes of every "pain made me stronger" story is a messy, non-linear process that rarely gets talked about. We celebrate the end result, but gloss over the middle. Those uncertain moments when you're neither defined by your wounds nor fully healed from them. This mindset shift matters because when we expect pain to automatically transform us into something invincible, we create impossible standards. We start believing that if we're still hurting, we must be doing recovery wrong. The truth, sometimes pain just hurts. Sometimes its only lesson is teaching us how to carry it with more grace. What's particularly fascinating is how this framing affects our decisions. Around healing, when being forged in fire becomes the only acceptable narrative, we might unconsciously resist gentler forms of recovery. We might even stay in painful situations longer than necessary, believing that's how strength is built. The most powerful revelation I've had is that true resilience often comes through tenderness rather than toughness, through connections rather than isolation, through understanding rather than enduring. The people I know who have truly metabolized their suffering don't walk around armored against life. They've developed a remarkable capacity to remain open despite knowing how much it can hurt. Now, I want to go even deeper into what actually happens when we face our pain directly, instead of trying to immediately transform it into something useful. If you're resonating with this perspective on pain and strength, write "healing isn't linear" in the comments section. The journey of transforming scars into genuine leverage requires a level of self-awareness that most aren't willing to face. Think about this. Those moments when life knocked you down didn't just leave marks. They created hidden pathways to strengths you never knew existed. When we talk about psychological resilience, we're actually discussing the alchemy of pain into power. I've observed that the most formidable minds aren't built in comfort. There's a profound transformation that occurs in the silent spaces between challenge and response. This is where your true character emerges. When you're alone with your thoughts, facing your demons without distraction, you develop what I call solitary strength, a rare quality that allows you to navigate chaos with clarity while others are still looking for external validation. The discipline of solitude isn't about isolation. It's about intentional independence. Consider how many decisions you make based on others' expectations versus your authentic instincts. In those moments of deliberate solitude, your internal compass calibrates itself, free from the magnetic pull of social pressure. This is where genuine confidence is forged, not in the spotlight of public approval, but in the quiet workshop of self-mastery. Behind the scenes of every significant achievement is this unseen work, the mental refinement that happens when nobody's watching. It's fascinating how our society celebrates the visible victory while remaining oblivious to the invisible battle that preceded it. Your psychological framework, the way you process setbacks and reconstruct them into stepping stones, becomes your most valuable asset in this journey. I've discovered that those who master this hidden discipline develop an almost uncanny ability to read situations and people. Your instincts sharpen when they aren't constantly dulled by external noise. This heightened awareness becomes your secret advantage in negotiations, relationships, and critical decision points. You see the chess moves others miss because you've learned to trust that quiet voice within, the one that speaks clearly only when everything else is silent. The most profound revelation in this process is that independence isn't the absence of connection, but the presence of choice. When you're psychologically autonomous, you choose your influences rather than being unconsciously shaped by them. You determine which voices deserve space in your mental architecture. This selective sovereignty over your mindset creates a foundation that can't be easily shaken by circumstance. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by examining how this psychological framework manifests in practical scenarios. The transformation from being externally defined to internally guided doesn't happen overnight, but there are specific inflection points worth recognizing in this evolution. If you've experienced this shift in your own life, that moment when you realized your scars weren't just memories but actual tools, write in the comments, "My scars became my strength." As we delve deeper into this transformation process, it's worth considering Machiavelli's profound insight about solitude. The great political philosopher wasn't merely suggesting occasional alone time. He recognized that true strength develops in isolation, away from the noise and influence of others. This sacred solitude isn't about running from reality. It's about confronting yourself without filters or distractions. Think about the moments of greatest clarity in your life. Weren't they often when you stepped away from the crowd? There's a reason why throughout history, warriors, monks, and great thinkers have all sought isolation before their most significant achievements. This deliberate separation creates the mental space necessary for profound internal work. Now, let's address something that might feel uncomfortable: the rejection of sentimentality. Society constantly encourages us to embrace our emotions fully, but there's a shadow side to this approach. The weaker aspects of ourselves, those parts that crumble under pressure, that seek validation, that avoid necessary conflict, these are the very elements that permitted our collapse in the first place. This isn't about becoming heartless. It's about emotional intelligence and discernment. It's about understanding when sentimentality serves as a crutch rather than a strength. The journey toward authentic power requires ruthless honesty about which parts of yourself need strengthening and which parts have become liabilities. The revelation here is counterintuitive. Sometimes the most compassionate thing you can do for yourself is to be uncomfortably honest about your weaknesses. This internal audit isn't meant to break you down, but to identify what needs reconstruction. Think of it as demolishing a structurally unsound building before erecting something stronger in its place. Many men find this process particularly challenging in today's world, where vulnerability is celebrated, but the disciplined cultivation of strength can be misinterpreted. This creates a fascinating paradox. The very isolation needed for growth can feel like moving against the current of modern thinking. The hidden truth is that this path isn't about regression to outdated ideals, but about progressive self-mastery. It's about building resilience that withstands not just today's challenges, but tomorrow's as well. The journey requires patience. You're essentially rewiring neural pathways that have been reinforced for years or even decades. I want to go even deeper into this territory by examining the practical applications of these principles. How does one actually implement this isolation strategically? What specific aspects of the self typically need the most reconstruction, and what invisible barriers might sabotage this process before it even begins? If you've ever found yourself stronger after a period of isolation or solitude, write, "Solitude strengthened me," in the comments below. I've found that isolation has a profound effect on our psychological evolution. There's this hidden truth that emerges when you step away from the constant noise of society. Your instincts actually become razor sharp. You start detecting patterns you never noticed before. The quiet moments reveal your authentic self in ways that are impossible in the chaos of daily life. Think about the great minds throughout history who deliberately isolated themselves. Tesla, Einstein, Newton, they all understood this fundamental principle. Their transformative insights didn't happen in crowded rooms. They occurred in moments of deliberate solitude. This isn't coincidence. It's a natural law of mental clarity. Now, when I talk about ruthlessness, I'm not suggesting cruelty. I'm referring to the mental discipline required to make decisions without the cloud of emotional attachment. This is a learnable skill that requires practice. You must identify the areas in your life where sentimentality is holding you back from necessary action. Where are you making decisions based on comfort rather than growth? The journey to mastering solitude isn't comfortable. It's actually meant to be challenging. The discomfort you feel when alone with your thoughts isn't something to avoid. It's the precise point of the exercise. That resistance you feel, it's your mind fighting against the very medicine it needs. What fascinates me is how discipline creates freedom rather than constraint. The disciplined mind develops pathways that the undisciplined mind can never access. It's like building neural highways that allow you to process information and make decisions with remarkable efficiency. Your decision-making becomes almost instinctual once properly trained. I want to go even deeper into this topic by examining how these principles apply in practical scenarios. The mindset shift required isn't theoretical. It manifests in specific moments throughout your day. Those small decisions compound over time, creating either advancement or regression. There's no neutral ground in the pursuit of excellence. When you're truly honest with yourself about your capabilities and limitations, you develop a foundation for genuine confidence that's unshakable. This self-knowledge becomes your sword and shield in navigating complex situations. If what I'm saying resonates with your own experiences of growth through solitude, write "Silence Speaks" in the comments. I'm curious, how many of you have discovered this truth through your own journey? When we discuss the discipline of ruthlessness, we're talking about something far more nuanced than simply being harsh. It's a calculated approach that champions decisive action over endless deliberation. This mindset transformation begins when you recognize that most people remain trapped in cycles of mediocrity because they refuse to make the difficult choices necessary for genuine progress. I've witnessed this pattern countless times in my own journey. The revelation that changed everything for me was understanding that ruthlessness isn't about cruelty toward others. It's about refusing to accept excuses from yourself. It's the hidden truth behind why some people seem to advance rapidly while others remain perpetually stuck. Think about the last time you made a truly difficult decision that served your long-term interests. Was it comfortable? Probably not. Did it produce results? Almost certainly. This is the essence of strategic ruthlessness, recognizing that temporary discomfort paves the way for lasting impact. When rebuilding your life with strategy, you must embrace what I call compassionate ruthlessness. being merciless with systems and habits that no longer serve you while maintaining your core values. This means setting boundaries that might disappoint others in the short term, but ultimately create space for authentic growth. The most successful people I've studied share this quality. They're willing to walk away from situations that most people would tolerate indefinitely. They understand that attachment to comfort is the primary obstacle to achievement. They're ruthless with their time, ruthless with their standards, and most importantly, ruthless with their focus. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by examining how this principle manifests in daily decision-making. Most people approach their daily choices from a place of emotion or convenience. The strategically ruthless person, however, evaluates decisions based on alignment with their larger vision. They understand that each small choice creates momentum, either toward their goals or away from them. This mindset requires a fundamental shift in how you view yourself. Rather than seeing yourself as someone who responds to circumstances, you must begin to see yourself as someone who creates circumstances. The difference is subtle, but profound. When you approach life with strategic ruthlessness, you become incredibly selective about what deserves your energy. You begin to recognize that saying yes to one thing means saying no to countless others. This selectivity becomes your superpower, the ability to eliminate distractions before they derail your progress. If you're nodding along as I explain this concept, type ruthless focus in the comments below. I'm curious to know how many of you already practice some form of strategic ruthlessness in your lives. The battlefield of power doesn't care about your feelings. What matters is your ability to make calculated decisions that serve your ultimate goals. Think about it. In moments of crisis or critical decision-making, those who let emotion cloud their judgment often make choices they later regret. This isn't about becoming heartless. It's about understanding the transformation that happens when you separate strategic thinking from emotional reactions. I've observed this pattern countless times in business negotiations. When one party becomes attached to an outcome based on ego or sentiment, they inevitably make concessions that undermine their position. The hidden truth here is that power doesn't respond to why you want something. It only acknowledges your ability to claim it through decisive action. Consider historical figures who achieved extraordinary influence. Behind their public personas were individuals capable of making difficult decisions without hesitation when necessary. This capacity for cold calculation provided them a significant advantage over opponents trapped in emotional thinking. Their journey wasn't about being liked. It was about being effective. In my own experience, the moments that generated the most significant breakthroughs came when I abandoned what felt comfortable and instead embraced what was necessary. This mindset shift doesn't happen overnight. It requires training yourself to recognize when emotions are hijacking your decision-making process and developing the discipline to pause and recalibrate. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by examining how this principle manifests in everyday interactions. The fascinating revelation is that we unconsciously recognize and respect this quality in others, even if we don't explicitly acknowledge it. When someone consistently demonstrates the ability to make decisions based on strategic thinking rather than emotional impulse, they naturally command more respect. This doesn't mean becoming manipulative or disregarding ethics. Rather, it's about developing clarity about your objectives and the courage to pursue them directly. The paradox is that by releasing the need for emotional validation in your decision-making, you actually create more meaningful connections and outcomes in the long term. The most powerful people I've encountered in business and life share this common trait. They've mastered the art of functional detachment. They can engage fully with the situation, while maintaining the perspective needed to make optimal decisions. This balance represents the ultimate form of self-mastery, being present without being controlled by immediate emotional reactions. If this perspective resonates with your own experiences, type cold clarity in the comments. I'm curious how many of you have recognized this pattern in your own journey toward greater effectiveness and influence. The modern world has created a peculiar paradox when it comes to solitude. While we're more connected than ever digitally, there's a profound disconnect happening in our real-world relationships. This separation isn't just circumstantial. It's becoming a deliberate choice for many, seeking to eliminate what society has labeled as weaknesses. I've observed a concerning shift in how we frame human connection. Dependency is increasingly portrayed as a liability rather than a natural part of the human experience. The narrative suggests that needing others somehow diminishes your personal power, reducing your capacity for greatness. This mindset transformation is subtle but pervasive. What's particularly fascinating is how solitude is being repackaged. It's no longer presented as potentially lonely or isolating. Instead, it's marketed as the ultimate environment for self-mastery. The messaging suggests that only in complete separation from others can you truly build the discipline required for success. The underlying implication, that human connection is merely a distraction from your higher purpose. But this journey toward extreme self-reliance comes with hidden costs that aren't often discussed. The neurochemical reality is that human beings are wired for connection. When we deliberately sever those connections in pursuit of strength, we're actually fighting against our biological design. This creates internal conflict that manifests in ways many don't anticipate. Behind the scenes of this strength through isolation movement is a deeper truth. Strength has historically come through community, not in spite of it. The most resilient societies throughout human history weren't collections of isolated individuals, but interconnected groups who understood the power of balanced interdependence. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic and explore what happens neurologically when we reframe vulnerability as weakness rather than courage. The impact of this shift extends far beyond our social lives, affecting everything from our creativity to our physical health in ways that might surprise you. The revelations about how our brains process isolation versus connection challenge many of the assumptions made by those advocating for extreme self-reliance. What appears to be strength on the surface often masks a different reality underneath, one where the pursuit of independence at all costs actually weakens rather than strengthens our fundamental capacities. If you're recognizing this pattern in your own life or in the advice you've been following, drop balance over isolation in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts on finding that middle ground between healthy autonomy and meaningful connection. And honestly, this might be where the approach gets uncomfortable for many of us. We live in a world so connected, so filled with noise, that the mere thought of embracing solitude can feel threatening. But I've discovered that this discomfort reveals something profound about our relationship with ourselves. When you begin to adopt solitude not as punishment but as a deliberate practice, your perception shifts. The silence no longer feels empty. It becomes filled with insights that were previously drowned out by external noise. This transformation isn't instantaneous. It unfolds gradually as you develop what I call silence resilience. What's fascinating is how this practice rewires your decision-making process. When you're constantly seeking validation from others, you're essentially outsourcing your judgment. Your choices become a patchwork of other people's opinions rather than a reflection of your authentic desires. The power move is recognizing this pattern and consciously breaking it. I remember the resistance I felt during my own journey toward embracing this mindset. There's a peculiar vulnerability in facing yourself without distraction. All your unresolved questions, doubts, and fears rise to the surface. Many people retreat at this point, reaching for their phone or seeking conversation to escape this confrontation. But pushing through this threshold is where the real revelation occurs. This isn't about becoming a recluse or rejecting meaningful connections. Rather, it's about establishing a powerful foundation of self-sufficiency that actually enhances your relationships. When you're no longer approaching others from a place of emotional dependency, your interactions become more authentic and balanced. The hidden truth many don't realize is that emotional independence doesn't lead to isolation, it leads to liberation. You begin to choose connections rather than cling to them. You contribute instead of just consume. Your presence becomes a gift rather than a need. What I find most compelling about this approach is how it challenges our cultural narratives about connection. We're told that constant accessibility equals caring, that immediate response demonstrates love. But this mindset suggests something more nuanced, that true strength in relationships comes from two complete individuals choosing each other, not from two halves seeking completion. Now, I want to go even deeper into how this philosophy manifests in daily decisions. Because understanding the concept intellectually is one thing, but implementing it through consistent choices is where real change happens. The remarkable impact begins when you start applying this perspective to everyday situations that previously would have triggered your need for external validation. If you're finding these ideas resonate with your own experiences or challenges, write "Independence speaks to me" in the comments. I'm curious how many of you are already walking this path, perhaps without having named it. Now, isolation isn't merely about being physically alone. It's about creating mental space where your true architecture of power can emerge without constant external influence. Think about those moments when you've had your clearest insights. Rarely do they come in crowded rooms or during endless social media scrolling. The transformation happens when you intentionally step away. I've witnessed professionals who seemed perpetually busy, yet accomplished little of substance, while others who deliberately carved out periods of isolation produced work that reshaped their entire fields. The difference lies in understanding that power doesn't accumulate through constant visibility, but through strategic invisibility. Consider historical figures who changed the world, from Einstein developing relativity during his time as a patent clerk to Maya Angelou writing in hotel rooms, where she removed all decorations from the walls. Their periods of withdrawal weren't signs of weakness, but deliberate power moves. They understood the hidden truth. Your relationship with yourself in isolation determines your effectiveness in every other domain. When you reject the modern obsession with constant connection, you discover something profound. The quality of your decisions improves dramatically. I've implemented this in my own journey by establishing what I call power hours, blocks of complete disconnection where the architecture of my thinking can stand without scaffolding from outside opinions. What's fascinating is how this principle applies across domains. Whether you're developing business strategy, creating art, or redefining your personal boundaries, isolation serves as the testing ground where ideas either collapse or reveal their inherent strength. The strongest concepts don't require constant external validation. They become more refined in solitude. I want to go even deeper into this topic by exploring how strategic isolation actually rewires your neural pathways. When you consistently practice intentional solitude, your brain forms new connections that prioritize internal guidance over external approval. This neurological shift fundamentally changes how you process information and make decisions. Behind the scenes, power has always been cultivated in moments of deliberate withdrawal. Those who appear suddenly with remarkable clarity and direction aren't lucky. They've mastered the art of productive isolation. They understand that true influence comes from developing ideas that stand on their own merit, not from constantly seeking validation. If what I'm saying resonates with your experience, Write strategic solitude in the comments. I'm curious how many of you have already discovered this principle in your own lives. But here's where the critical mindset shift happens. Isolation, truly removing yourself from the noise, is not a punishment or some dreaded state to avoid. It's the fertile soil where your most powerful plans take root. I've discovered that my clearest thinking emerges during these deliberate periods of separation from the world's constant chatter. Think about it. Every significant transformation in history, whether personal or societal, was first conceived in moments of focused solitude. This isn't about becoming a hermit. It's about creating strategic spaces where your true ambitions can crystallize without interference. The hidden truth most people miss is that control begins with mental clarity, not external circumstances. When I talk about controlling your life, I'm referring to establishing sovereignty over 4 specific domains: your mind first, your time second, your relationships third, and how you respond to external chaos fourth. Your mind is the command center, the battlefield where everything is won or lost before it manifests in reality. This is why I'm deeply intentional about what information I consume and when. The average person unconsciously absorbs over 5,000 marketing messages daily, each one slightly redirecting their attention and desires. By creating boundaries around my mental intake, I've reclaimed the power to direct my own thoughts. Control over your time follows naturally. I've observed a fascinating pattern among those who've mastered their domains. They don't find time for important work. They design their entire schedule around it. Everything else must fight for the remaining slots. This reversal of priority is transformative. Relationships are perhaps the most overlooked aspect of personal sovereignty. The uncomfortable reality is that the people you regularly engage with are either elevating your standards or subtly lowering them. There is no neutral exchange of energy. This doesn't mean cutting people off callously, but rather being intentional about who shapes your everyday environment. As for external chaos, the unexpected challenges, the market shifts, the global uncertainties, control comes not from predicting them, but from building systems that can absorb and adapt to them. Resilience isn't just about bouncing back. It's about having the flexibility to restructure your approach when necessary. Now, I want to go even deeper into how this philosophy manifests in practical decision-making. The journey toward mastery isn't linear. It requires recognizing certain pivotal moments that most people completely miss. These critical junctures often appear ordinary on the surface, but contain extraordinary potential for those with the awareness to recognize them. If any of this resonates with your own experience, write "Sovereignty Matters" in the comments. I'm curious how many of you have already been implementing these principles, perhaps without naming them. Understanding the gravity of what it means to build a fortress of will is where many people stop short in their journey. It's not simply about being mentally tough or resistant to life's challenges. This fortress becomes your sanctuary, a place where external forces can't penetrate your core identity and decision-making power. When I talk about becoming unfathomable, I'm referring to that quality certain individuals possess, where others simply cannot predict or manipulate their responses. Think about the most sovereign people you've encountered. There's something almost mystical about their presence. They operate from internal reference points that others can't access or influence. The revelation that sovereignty must be seized rather than granted is perhaps the most crucial understanding in this entire transformation. We live in a world of inherited beliefs, borrowed dreams, and socially acceptable limitations. The hidden truth is that true power waits for no permission slip. It doesn't arrive with age, education, or social approval. It emerges the moment you decide to claim ownership of your life's direction. This seizing of sovereignty reminds me of ancient rites of passage that existed across civilizations. These weren't merely symbolic gestures, they recognized the fundamental human need to declare one's independence and self-governance. Modern society has largely abandoned these rituals, leaving many adrift, waiting for someone to hand them the keys to their own kingdom. Your fortress of will becomes unbreakable, not through stubbornness, but through clarity. When you know exactly what you stand for and what you're working toward, external pressures lose their power over you. Opinions, criticisms, and even praise become mere data points rather than defining factors in your decision-making process. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by exploring how this fortress manifests in practical terms. The impact of operating from genuine sovereignty extends far beyond just feeling more confident. It fundamentally alters how reality responds to your presence in it. There's a remarkable shift that occurs when you move through the world from this centered place of authority. Think about the moments in your life when you felt truly aligned and empowered. Notice how different your results were compared to times when you operated from obligation, fear, or external validation. This isn't coincidental. It reflects the universal principle that sovereignty attracts sovereignty in all its forms. If what I'm saying resonates with your own experience or intuition about personal power, write "Building My Fortress" in the comments. I'd love to know how this concept connects with where you are on your own journey right now. This state of sovereignty isn't something that happens overnight. It's a gradual transformation, a quiet evolution that occurs when you consistently choose your own path over the well-worn trails others expect you to follow. Think about the people who command genuine respect in your life. They aren't the ones desperately seeking approval or constantly checking how their actions are being perceived. What fascinates me about true sovereignty is the paradox it creates. When you no longer need external validation, you often receive it in abundance. There's something magnetically attractive about someone who stands firmly in their truth without wavering. It's as if the universe recognizes and rewards this rare form of authentic courage. The journey towards sovereignty requires facing uncomfortable revelations about yourself. You'll discover how many of your daily decisions are actually driven by invisible social pressures rather than your genuine desires. This awareness can be jarring at first, like realizing you've been living in someone else's dream. I've observed that sovereign individuals rarely announce their sovereignty. They don't need to. Their presence speaks volumes without words. They carry a certain weight, a gravitas that makes others naturally defer to them in conversations and decisions. And this isn't about domination or control. It's about embodying such a clear sense of purpose and self-knowledge that others instinctively recognize it. The hidden truth about sovereignty is that it's not about becoming someone new. It's about peeling away the layers of social conditioning and people-pleasing behaviors to rediscover who you've always been. In many ways, you're not becoming sovereign, you're remembering your sovereignty. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by examining how sovereignty manifests differently across various aspects of life. There's professional sovereignty, emotional sovereignty, intellectual sovereignty, each with its own challenges and rewards. The mindset required to achieve sovereignty in your career might look very different from what's needed in your personal relationships. If what I'm saying resonates with your own experience or aspirations, write "Reclaiming My Sovereignty" in the comments below. Becoming a node of gravity isn't just about personal achievement. It's an energetic transformation that ripples through your entire social ecosystem. When you develop this kind of magnetic presence, people begin responding to you differently without you having to say a word. It's as if they can sense the shift in your internal landscape before you even enter a room. I've seen this phenomenon unfold countless times during my journey working with clients. One man I coached, let's call him Marcus, had spent years trying To gain respect through constant explanation and justification. He was accomplished on paper, but somehow always found himself being interrupted in meetings or having his ideas attributed to others. The breakthrough came when he realized his sovereignty wasn't something to be earned through external validation, but rather something to be claimed from within. The hidden truth about commanding respect is that it rarely comes from what you say, but rather how you carry yourself in the spaces between your words. It's in the pause before you respond. It's in your willingness to stand in silence when others rush to fill the void with noise. This profound comfort with your own presence creates an almost magnetic field around you that others can feel, but often can't explain. What separates those who achieve this state from those who don't isn't intelligence or even experience. It's their relationship with themselves. The inner dialogue has shifted from seeking approval to offering value, from needing validation to providing direction. This is the essence of what I call sovereign presence, when your self-assurance becomes so deeply rooted that it becomes part of your cellular structure. The beautiful revelation in this work is discovering that true authority never demands recognition. It simply exists as an undeniable force. Like gravity itself, it doesn't need to announce its presence to have its effect. This is why so many who chase status symbols and external markers of success often feel hollow despite their achievements. They're attempting to build from the outside in, when sovereignty always emerges from within. Now I want to go even deeper into this transformation and explore how this inner shift affects not just how others perceive you, but how you begin to move through the world differently. You'll notice decisions become clearer, boundaries become natural rather than forced, and your capacity to navigate complexity expands in ways you couldn't have imagined before. If any of what I've shared resonates with your own experience of claiming your personal power, write, "I'm claiming my sovereignty," in the comments below. Ultimately, seizing the crown of sovereignty involves controlling oneself utterly without apology. This journey to sovereignty isn't just about power, it's about transformation from within. When we truly master ourselves, we no longer seek permission or validation from external sources. We become the sole authority over our thoughts, emotions, and actions. The most remarkable aspect of this internal revolution is how it manifests in our external world. Relationships strengthen or dissolve based on their alignment with our authentic selves. Professional paths clarify as we stand firmly in our truth without wavering. The person who has claimed their sovereignty moves through life with a distinctive presence that others can sense, sometimes with admiration, sometimes with discomfort. Harnessing the chaos in life becomes a profound form of control. Rather than being tossed about by circumstances, the sovereign individual rides the waves of uncertainty with remarkable grace. They don't resist life's inherent unpredictability. They work with it, finding opportunities where others see only obstacles. This is the hidden truth that separates those who merely survive from those who truly thrive in our increasingly complex world. The journey to sovereignty demands confronting our shadows, those parts of ourselves we've denied or suppressed. Every time we say, "I can't help it," or "that's just how I am," we're abdicating our throne. Sovereignty requires the courage to look unflinchingly at our flaws and accept full responsibility for them. This isn't about harsh self-judgment, but about honest self-awareness. Now, I want to go even deeper into this concept of personal sovereignty because there's a profound misunderstanding about what true control actually means. Many confuse control with rigidity, forcing life into submission through sheer will. But authentic sovereignty operates differently. It's fluid, adaptive, and remarkably resilient precisely because it doesn't attempt to control the uncontrollable. Instead, it masters the art of response. The sovereign individual isn't immune to life's challenges. They simply possess the inner stability to navigate them without losing their center. This form of mastery creates a fascinating paradox. The more you genuinely release the need to control external circumstances, the more influence you naturally exert over your experience. Your decisions come from a place of clarity rather than reaction. Your boundaries stem from self-respect rather than fear. Your presence carries weight not because you demand attention, but because you no longer need it. If what I'm describing resonates with you, type "sovereignty claimed" in the comments below. Let's acknowledge this powerful path together. If you've stayed with me through this exploration of sovereignty, you're clearly someone who values deeper understanding of personal power. You know, one of the most meaningful aspects of creating these videos is connecting with people who are actively working on their personal evolution. If that's you, I'd love for you to hit subscribe so we can continue this journey together. If something in this message spoke directly to your experience, leave a comment with "sovereignty claimed." I read every comment, and it helps me know what's resonating. Like on this video genuinely helps others find this content who might be on the same path we're walking. There's a video right here that explores how to maintain sovereignty during conflict and challenging relationships. Click and continue with me there if you're ready to take this concept even further.